And now I would like to introduce today's special guest. In a few minutes, Equal Voice will present the Eve Award to one of Canada's truly great women, Her Worship, the Mayor of Mississauga, the one and only Hurricane Hazel McCallion. This award is, of course, not the first Hazel has received. Not only is she a member of the Order of Canada, but she's gained international recognition. She ranked second in the World Mayors poll 2 years ago. She holds Germany's highest honor, the Cross of the Order of Merit. This month, the University of Toronto at Mississauga opened the impressive new library named in Hazel's honor. And what other politician has had not one, but 4 bobble-headed dolls made in her likeness? These are all terrific honors, but I'm guessing if we asked her right now, Mayor McCallion would say that she's most gratified and honored by being able to do what she does best, and that is to put her nose to the grindstone and work for the people of her beloved Mississauga. And the people of Mississauga love her right back. The nickname Hurricane Hazel is meant with affection, a tribute to her seamless, boundless energy. She even drove herself to today's luncheon. And her unwavering commitment to public service. And it's also an acknowledgement of a ferocious political instinct. Even her opponents stand in awe. Not that she has had to worry all that much about political opposition. Since first winning the mayor's seat in Mississauga back in 1978, Hazel has been re-elected or simply acclaimed 11 straight times. She won last year with 91% of the vote. Oh, and that was without campaigning. Dictators dream of those kind of numbers. Hazel can be proud of her many successes. Through the decades, her no-nonsense approach has shaped Mississauga from a collection of villages to what it is today, one of the country's largest, most successful and varied municipalities. Mississauga is Hazel and always will be. But it is Hazel's spirit that is the key to her success. Hazel's great heart is what keeps voters by her side. In 1979, Mississauga was rocked by an enormous explosion. A freight train hauling chlorine gas derailed. More than 200,000 residents had to be evacuated. There was Hazel, tirelessly leading the rescue efforts, even though she was hobbled by a sprained ankle. Voters don't forget things like that. Today we recognize Hazel not only for her successes in Mississauga, but also for her trailblazing role as a woman in the arena of Canadian politics. And given that the theme of today's luncheon is women in public life, we've asked the Mayor to reflect not only on her very own, very interesting career in politics, but also to say a few words about how we get more women to Ottawa, Queen's Park, and city halls across the country. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to our podium today Her Worship, Hazel McCallion, the Mayor of Mississauga.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. You know, it being short, the rain hits you last, but you drown sooner. Ladies and gentlemen, what a pleasure to be here today and be invited to address you. It's such an honor. I've had a number of honors over the years, but to have all these women in one room is just great. And I want to welcome the men. It's very important. Canadian Club, of course, has a very long and proud history, providing a supportive environment for its speakers and guests with 40 clubs across Canada, and I've spoken to some of them, believe it or not. The unique forum you provide for exchanging information and ideas will continue for years to come. And then, of course, Equal Voice, which is so important. That program and that organization is to be commended for the challenge that they have, and it is a great challenge. But you know, we have won some successes. For instance, Minister Borgiani at the table, Minister Canfield, who runs one of the largest departments of the province of Ontario, the Department of Transportation. Quite honestly, I said to her today, and I've said publicly, she's the best transportation minister that the province has had for a long time. I've also worked with Minister Butriana on trying to fix the gap that exists between the federal government and the provincial government. We don't get our share here in the province of Ontario. And I tell you, I was pretty upset as Mayor of Mississauga when I read that Charest, the Premier of Quebec, was going to give a tax break because of the equalization grants they get from Alberta and Ontario. Kind of tough, isn't it? So it's just a pleasure. And we have I want to go back in history to 1968, when I first, 67, when I first ran as Deputy Reeve of the town of Streetsville. And I did not win because the women could not believe a woman wanted to get into the world of politics. And of course, the council was made up of all men. Well, I lost that year, but I went back the next year and won. Then was appointed Reeve because the Reeve resigned, and was mayor of Streetsville for 3 years. In 1978, when I was elected mayor of Mississauga, I believe I won because of women's support. What a change between 68 and 78. So change is occurring in regard to the support for women in public office. But let me go back to beyond that, and when I worked in the private sector for 20 years with Canadian Kellogg. I started, not the cereal people, I started in Montreal and was transferred to Toronto to set up the office to build the first synthetic rubber plant in Canada during the war, 1942. The company I worked for was M.W. Kellogg, New York. This was the Canadian operation. They designed the plant, and we purchased the materials to build it. My company gave me the opportunity to be a part of management. And as a result, I remember my boss said to me, you should join the Personnel Association of Toronto because you're hiring all these people for this major contract. No women allowed. And then he said, well, try the office management because that's what you're doing. No women allowed. So we set up the Women's Personnel Association of Toronto many years ago. See, there's always a way around it. Secondly, we built the St. Lawrence, the coal plant, Lakeview Generating, and in Mississauga. I was paid to build it, and then got an award for closing it. I thought that was really something. As mayor for the last 29 years, it'll be 30 years next year, I've learned a lot. I am not a university graduate, high school graduate from the province of Quebec. By the way, it only takes 11 years in Quebec to accomplish what the educational system in Ontario took 12 years to do. So started in the business world, took a business course at Notre Dame Secretarial in Montreal. And so I've learned a lot through the process because life is a learning experience. It's great, and therefore when the University of Toronto, the Mississauga campus, named the library after me. I can assure you it was quite an honor to think that I'm not a university graduate and to think that they recognized. And so I have a speech, and I know you've taped it or put it on, but I'm not going to follow it because I can't follow a written speech. I've got to talk from the heart. Yes, in 1979, I was elected mayor in 78, and in 1979, we had the derailment. A very serious. I remember at 11 o'clock at night, 2 minutes to 11, or shortly after, my son woke me up and said I'd gone to bed early that night, woke me up and said, "Mom, I think the city hall is blown up," because he had seen this huge blaze in it. And it was the train loaded with chemicals that derailed because of a hot box, because the guy in the caboose at the end was asleep. As a result, I got up and went down to Square One, where hundreds of families in their night clothes were in Square One because the police forced them to leave immediately, not even to take time to get dressed. And from there on, I didn't get to bed for 4 nights because we had to put together a major team. And I remember Roy McMurtry came out from the province and others to help us. And at one point, he thought he was in charge until the mayor says, "I'm in charge." That was my first experience of telling provincial people. You know, I define the 3 levels of government. Federal government has all the money, the provincial government has all the authority, and local government has all the problems. That's really it. That was a wonderful experience. Yes, I call it the Mississauga miracle because we evacuated over 230,000 people, and people came from all across the world to find out how we handled it because they were amazed at the evacuation that went so smoothly. I think the most impressive item during that derailment is when I went down to the Mississauga Hospital to see everybody, all the patients, evacuated from the hospital and taken to the Queensway. People coming down right out of the operating room and into an ambulance. 50-some ambulances lined up at the Mississauga Hospital. That shows, you see, that when there is a crisis situation, that everybody works together. We only had 2 ambulances in the city of Mississauga at the time, but 50-some were lined up. I got calls from all across Canada to offer help. I got calls from municipalities throughout the province saying, "Send your people here, we'll put them in the arenas, we'll look after them." It was an exercise that should go down in history. And since then, by the way, I've sat on the committee representing the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. We had no control of the transportation of dangerous goods by land, air, or sea, and we now have it as a result of the Mississauga derailment. The stack of books are like that, and I sat on the committee since then until the last 7 years in which it was disbanded, in which we brought together all the emergency personnel representatives, fire, ambulance, CN, CP, and now Canada is safer because of the Mississauga derailment. We worked to bring about the controls. It pleased me when I went into a restaurant in Mississauga a few years ago in which a driver of a transport truck came over and said, "Madam Mayor," he said, "your effort has made it mandatory for me that when I leave my truck in the parking lot and go into a restaurant to have a cup of coffee, that I must take the papers with me that tells me what's on that truck in case it blows up." That's how now we have protection in Canada. We have mandatory rules that apply now. So Canada is safer because of the Mississauga derailment. What is the success of a politician? Is communicating with your people. You have to be out with your people. It's so important. So often, I answer every phone call if a person says they want an answer, they want to talk to the mayor. I see every letter that comes into my office. I see every email. I see all the reports and try to read them. You have to communicate to your people. And I've learned to say no to the citizens when they ask for something that is, in my opinion, not legitimate or can't be done because it would cost all the taxpayers to do that for them specifically. And sometimes politicians veer away from saying no. They'll give an excuse, or they'll say, I'll look at it. If I don't believe that it should be looked at, I tell the people, I'm sorry, I will not take the time to look at it because for these reasons, it is not practical, it's not possible, and I must be upfront with you. Politicians today, what people are looking for is integrity in politicians. That is really what is so important. And yes, we have made progress in more women in politics. When I met with Charlotte Whitten many years ago, you remember she was the mayor of Ottawa that went in and cleaned up Ottawa in a big way. And another thing that she won was even more. She was appointed to the Synod of the Anglican Church of Canada, and that's what I call the hot stove lead. Can you imagine Charlotte Whitten being appointed? She was a Roman Catholic converted to Anglicanism. And in fact, I had the fortunate of boarding at the same boarding house in Montreal that her brother boarded at. And so I knew her brother before. What a leader. And we've come a long way since then because there were very few women mayors in Canada. There were very few women mayors when I became mayor of Streetsville. But we've made a lot of progress in that regard. I remember meeting with the president of the Ford Motor Company of Canada and the president of the General Motors. It really is moving forward. And more women are being appointed. I want to congratulate Premier McGuinty for the women that he's chosen to lead some major departments, cabinetly, at the province. And I believe that John Tory has also appealed to more women to come forward to offer themselves for office. I've been asked the question, and maybe I've been asked the question, why didn't you go on to provincial and federal politics? I've been asked many times. I've been asked by all the parties. In fact, I was asked to run as leader of the Liberal Party when Peterson was elected leader. You see, at the local level, you can accomplish things much faster. And as well as you don't have to worry about whether you vote for something that you don't believe in. And that is the problem with provincial and federal politics, that I would wear out the rug crossing the floor. But at the same time, I'm very proud to lead a council of 12 people, of which 9 are women. That's unheard of. And I think that women are quite active in local politics. And today we have some mayors in the audience. We have the mayor of Port Hope is here. Right. And that is a wonderful training ground for them to go on into party politics. But I believe, ladies and gentlemen, that party politics have to change. I've written to the 3 leaders of the national parties and the 3 provincial leaders and told them quite plump and plain that I don't want any more parachuted candidates coming to Mississauga. because of the fact that we have capable people locally and a lot of capable women that can serve and offer to their services to all parties. You see, we have to start to take some very strong stands. And there's an article in the Star this morning, Glass Ceiling Changing Nature. It's changing the glass ceiling, but very slowly in the private sector as well as the public sector. And so what is it all about, getting women? I say to women, stop stuffing envelopes and licking stamps for male politicians. Because as you go through a provincial and federal election, it's the women out there working more than even the men for the candidates. Why don't you offer yourself for public office? And what it takes is for more women to encourage more women to get involved and to support them. You know, I think they want to become involved, but they hesitate to do it because of the campaigning. At the local level, it's quite different, but I'm speaking of the provincial and federal. It's time that Canada had a woman prime minister. Long overdue. And as I go around to the graduations, etc., and as I meet, I try to encourage the young people, and especially the young women, to get involved in politics and plan, have a vision that someday they might be Prime Minister of Canada. And, of course, at the local level, we need more women premiers. And I hope that when some of the leaders retire, that women will step forward. But it needs the support of women to do it. I have to tell you. You know, there's a plaque that I have above my phone that reads, 4 things a woman should know. How to look like a girl. How to act like a lady. How to think like a man. That I have never figured out. And most important of all, how to work like a dog. Because for women to accomplish things either in the public or private sector, I have to tell you, you better do your homework. You better do your homework. Because for a woman to make a mistake, it's headlines, it's noted, and especially sometimes noted by other women and emphasized. A man's mistake is overlooked by the boys, right? But a woman's mistake, oh, it's highlighted. So therefore, but if you want to go anywhere in either the private or public sector, you have to do your homework. You have to work hard. And I'm so proud of the women on my council, you know, in which they've done their homework before the item comes before council. They've been to the staff to ask questions. Sometimes I see the men going through what's next on the agenda. And that's typical, I have to. Now, all the men in this room are exceptions, of course. Secondly, you have to be honest with your citizens. You know, I tell the people of Mississauga, and I'm sure they've heard me say it, if we left the development and the planning of Mississauga to the citizens, it would be all over the place. Really. We got to have a plan. And you got to stick to the plan as much as you can to make sure that things are done right. You know what Ford said? He said if we had asked the people whether you should build a car, they would have said, no, we want faster horses. So you got to realize that you're going to have people objecting practically to everything that you bring forward. But you have to take the time to hear them. You have to take the time to explain to them why you can't support what they are hoping that you might that they've asked you to do. And it's taking time. It's communication. The world's biggest problem is lack of communication. And so it is communication, being out with the people, being out with them to make sure that you're at the events that happen in your city. I make every effort to be there. So what is the challenge of women in politics? Well, there's a provincial election coming up, and I believe there are more women offering, but not enough. There should be a wide choice in all the ridings in Ontario. And then, of course, the federal government, there'll be a federal election shortly. And this organization that I'm so proud to receive this award today has got a major contribution to make. And it's women that have to take the initiative. It's women that have to support women. And I want to emphasize that. It's women that have got to say to others, why don't you offer yourself for public office? You know, sometimes it just needs that to encourage them to get involved. And so I can assure you that, let me give you a little thing I clipped out of it. Do you know what would have happened if it had been 3 wise women instead of 3 wise men that went to visit Jesus? They would have asked for direction, arrived on time, helped deliver the baby, cleaned the stable, made a casserole, and brought practical gifts. Another little clipping. There's a lady that sends me these. I don't know why, but a man and his wife were arguing about who should brew the coffee each morning. She said, you should do it. You know how, by the way, you expect the secretary, the men expect the secretary to take the coffee. It's nice to have a boss that delivers the coffee to the secretary. Anyway, he said, you are in charge of the kitchen and you should do it because it's your job. I can't, but the Bible says that the man should do the coffee. And boy, was the husband surprised. It isn't the Bible yet. I can't believe it. Show me. So she fetched the Bible, opened the New Testament, and at the top of several pages, it indeed says, he brews. You know, as I say to women, women can do any job a man can do. I just get a delight when I go to the Engineers Association now and see all those women as engineers, all the women as doctors, all the women as dentists. You see, the professions, they have attracted a lot of women. It's just the public office that needs. I'm so delighted that in my city, the city manager is a woman, Janice Baker. The president and CEO of our Board of Trade is a woman, Cheryl McKean. The chairman of our Board of Trade is Eva Lieberman, vice president of Mary Kay Cosmetics. And the United Way is directed by a woman. In fact, quite honestly, folks, we've taken over. It just shows. And one thing that really bugs me is to have a woman appointed for symbolic reasons. I don't want to see that happen. Our city manager was chosen because she's been recognized as one of the most popular, most effective city managers in the public service. And a woman must be given a position based on the ability to do the job. No symbolism. Thank you very much. Because we can do the job. So I say to this organization, keep up the wonderful work. We're making great progress. There's no question about it. And another little bit of advice is work like you will never die. Live like you could die at any time. That is another philosophy that we should remember. So I'd like to end with, I've just enjoyed being mayor of Mississauga. When I think we've taken a bedroom community that had thousands go out every morning to Toronto and other to work and come home at night to sleep. Now we have 70 to 80,000 more people come into Mississauga in the morning than goes out of Mississauga. We've converted it from a bedroom community to a self-sustaining community. We have 59 of the Fortune 500 head offices in our city. We have close to 100 Fortune 500 companies. We have 86 German companies. That's one of the reasons I got the Award of Merit of the country of Germany. We have 92 Japanese companies. We are the Japanese capital of Canada. We got them all. And we are still debt-free since 1978. And you know, women say to me, how do you run such a large budget and such a large corporation? Well, you know, ladies, it's no different than running your home. You have a budget. You got children to look after. You got a husband to look after. He really should be looking after you, but that's fine. It is no different. You have a budget, and you buy when you have the money to buy it. We build in Mississauga when we have the money to build it. We built a $65 million civic center, paid. Built a $60 million living arts center, paid for. We built a $32 million Hershey Center, all paid for. And we have, now don't tell Minister Canfield or the Premier, we have $700 million in reserves. All allocated for it. And we know that if this government continues to be as generous as they have in the last week by announcing the $17.5 billion for infrastructure and especially transit, that things will change in this Greater Toronto area. And I have been pushing for that for a long time, as many politicians have. But this government has responded. We got to curb the gridlock in the Greater Toronto area. And thanks to Premier McGuinty and his government and Donna Canfield, the Minister of Transportation, that they've announced this. I'm on the Greater Toronto Transportation Authority, and we were given our marching orders last Friday in Mississauga when the Premier announced this. And we're going to move to make it possible for the people of the Greater Toronto area to have less stress, which affects our health plan, to have more time at their home with their family, which is serious when you're stuck on the highway, and reduce the pollution that is causing us problems in the GTA. So, folks, we have a lot to do. There's no question about it. And we have a long way to go. Don't think we can stop either in the public or private. We have a long way to go. But I will know that we have been there when the husbands ask their wives at night, do you have a clean blouse to wear tomorrow?
Thank you, Mayor McCallion, for that inspiring and entertaining speech. And now I'd like to call on Donna Dasco, Vice Chair for Equal Voice, to express our thanks and present the Eve Award. Donna?
Thank you very much. I'm delighted, most delighted to be here today on behalf of the Canadian Club of Toronto and on behalf of Equal Voice to thank Mayor McCallion for her wonderful speech and to present her with Equal Voice's Eve Award. The Equal Voice Eve Award recognizes people who have made a significant contribution to advancing women in Canadian politics. Our first recipient was Member of Parliament Carolyn Bennett, and last year's recipient was the Honourable Flora MacDonald. Both Flora and Carolyn have been trailblazers for women in federal politics, and they have symbolized and strongly supported our cause, and we salute them for that. This year, I'm pleased to recognize the trailblazer in municipal politics, today's keynote speaker, Mayor Hazel McCallion. We have heard earlier about her many honors, both national and international. And today we recognize Hazel McCallion for her outstanding success in leading the city of Mississauga for almost 3 decades and building it to be one of Canada's most livable, desirable, and successful communities. We also recognize her incredible success as a politician, as we have heard a record 11 electoral wins, which is unprecedented for any politician, female or male. And as a public opinion pollster, I am particularly respectful of her incredible approval ratings in those polls, which again are unprecedented and higher than I have seen for any prime minister, any premier, or any party leader in Canada. I want to tell you a little story. About 2 years ago, Mississauga City Council was reviewing the results of a survey of Mississauga residents. That survey showed that Mayor McCallion had an astounding 96% approval level. The same survey showed that 2%, however, disapproved of her performance as mayor. Mayor McCallion spoke out at that meeting. So, 2% disapprove, she said, and I know them both. Imagine having only 2 detractors, Stephen Harper or the Premier would die for such results. Hazel McCallion's success reminds us of the importance of municipal politics, in particular, in the political careers of many women, and we want to recognize that, and we want to encourage women to step forward and to take an even larger role in municipal politics. And we think Hazel McCallion is a wonderful role model for that. And as we've heard today, she has given us some sage advice. And finally, Hazel McCallion's success reminds us that women in politics are not cut from the same mold. They have different beliefs, different styles of leadership, different backgrounds, and different personalities. We like Hazel McCallion's feisty iconoclasm. She is Hurricane Hazel, and for us, she is the perfect storm. So I would now like to call upon Helen Burston of Equal Voice to join me here at the podium to help present the 2000 Eve Award to Mayor Hazel McCallion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Donna and Helen, and thanks again to Mayor McCallion for being with us today for our 2nd annual Women in Public Life Luncheon. Thank you all for coming today. This meeting is now adjourned.